Welcome back, guys, to another upload, another video brought to you by your one and only literary pharaoh. Yesterday at work, I had a conversation with some of my coworkers. We had a little bit of downtime, and they were talking about many topics, talking about relationships, marriage, commitment, and my coordinator at work, he was speaking about the importance of the Bible, and how he and his wife wake up every morning and pray and all this other stuff. And to each its own. I'm not against people who pray. I'm not against people who do whatever that they need to do to make sense of this chaotic world that we live in. I say chaotic world that we live in because even though there's something that exists called absolute truth, it's fleeting. In other words, people aren't comprehending that absolute truth. So therefore, in the midst of absolute truth, if you operate outside the confines of absolute truth, you find yourself in chaos. Because when you're operating outside of absolute truth, you have a perception that you're operating in absolute truth, where in actuality you're not. And that contrast of thought, or that dichotomy, so to speak, of having the absolute truth present and you thinking you have the absolute truth in your presence, causes confusion. That's the that's the catalyst of mental illness. That's the start of it. That's how things begin to break down systematically. And my coworkers, I mentioned a statement of, because they initially started off by talking about, and this is the part to me that gets me very frustrated with people that are trying to be awakened, but there seems to be a stumbling block that stops them from fully opening their eyes. And they were all saying the right things. And I say the right things, it's almost similar to a person that opens one door. And once you enter that door, there's another door to open. So every door that you open leads you to another door. When you follow the sequence of thought, when you're trying to break down the reality that you live in, and trying to find some sort of sense in it, it's not that you're going down a rabbit hole. I don't want you guys to think that way. The more doors you open, it enables you to open more doors to open. But if you never walk through that first door, you won't have the opportunity to open the next door. So as you're uncovering layers of deception and you're acquiring some sort of truth, some semblance of truth, I'm not saying it's absolute, but you're coming to a surface type of acknowledgement and some sort of a surface type of knowledge to understand the reality that you're in, it behooves you to continue to move in that direction. But for some reason, our melanated people, our people of color, we can't get over that barrier of religion. And we think that religion, especially our own religion, that we are emboldened to, being Christianity or sometimes being a Muslim, we tend to think that that's different than any other system that's in the world. When we had the conversation at work, my co-workers, it was me, my coordinator, and two other ladies. They understand how the foods are put here in our world to get us sick. They understand that, so applaud to them. I applaud them for actually knowing that. Some people don't think that. People think that food is food. No. The foods, 98% of the things you guys buy in stores that you guys think are food are not food. They're either processed foods or they are ultra processed foods. Okay? Hold on, I gotta take this call. I'll be right back. Yeah, so when people are peeling back the layers and getting towards truths, it's like I said earlier, it's important that you continue to go, and even if it challenges your most sacred beliefs, because it's all beliefs, all right? You can't get to fact finding and then all of a sudden start to theorize things when you get closer to things that you are uncomfortable with actually, shining light on. We are, as a people, afraid of losing on what we hold to be, or what we perceive to be true, right? A lot of people believe in religion. And when I say religion, I mean all man-made religions. So again, the people that I work with, I'm very proud of them that they come to the realization that they weren't always like this. I really believe that being around me a lot and hearing me talk about foods, and they are aware of my eating habits. They are aware of what I put into my body and what I don't put into my body. So they know that I'm very particular about the things that I eat, and I'm very disciplined in that regard. And if they ever want to know why, I tell them why. I try my best. I say I try my best because I'm not perfect at it. I try my best to only eat things that are grown from the earth. Things that are natural. So when I hear my coworkers mention things like the foods are used to get people sick, when I'm hearing words like biochemical warfare, when I'm hearing words like bioweapons, when I'm hearing words like psychological warfare from my coworkers, I'm impressed. That means that they're getting somewhere. Because if you know that the system, when I say the system, I mean what the world promotes. If you watch television, they don't have commercials of fruits and vegetables on the screen. They're not gonna, the industry, the military industrial complex, the industry doesn't profit off of people eating healthy. The industry doesn't profit off of farmers making a profit, because if farmers made a profit, land would be more at a premium, number one. Number two, people would be a little bit healthier, a lot healthier, and it would diminish the power that the pharmaceutical industry has on people with all these medicines that they dispense. So when I'm hearing, I gotta take another call. I'll be right back, guys. Busy morning. Sorry, guys. So yeah, as I was saying, as you're getting closer to truth, it's not, oh, I'm gonna conveniently shy away from what I'm finding out and not use deductive reasoning and not actually use my critical thinking skills to challenge my belief. But there's something about religion that keeps people of color captivated underneath that oppressive system. So the conversation was very, very enlightening to me, because I found out the thought process of certain people. And I know they say everyone has their own time of awakening. I understand that. Whether you believe in star systems or not, or whether you believe in the, whether you study astronomy or astrology, whether you believe in those signs, birth signs and all that stuff, it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not. Those systems that people use are real. Not only are they real, they produce something. Those systems are not demonic. Those systems are not witchcraft. Those birth signs that people talk about, those zodiac signs, they mean something. The different ages that we enter, when people leave the age of Pisces and enter the age of Aquarius, all those ages mean something. It does something because we are electrical beings, and it does something to the frequency of the planet, and it also alters our mind states. We are in the age of Aquarius. What does that mean? It means the age of enlightenment. If you are still, if you haven't changed your belief system by now, moving toward the light, because some people, they think they're moving toward the light, but they're moving more toward the dark. They think that going into religion is light, is enlightenment. They think that going into religion is spirituality. And that's what I was trying to tell my coworkers. I told them, I said, well, you guys understand that the foods are corrupt, but yet they promote foods as foods, but they're not foods. They're essentially poisons. They promote the things that stress you out. They promote everything that's promoted is to benefit the industry, to make you dependent upon the industry to supply you with the resolution to a problem that the industry itself gave you. So we're going to give you the problem, but then we're going to give you a solution, or I should say alleged solution, because they really don't provide solutions. They provide products and merchandise that are given the perception of being something that's going to be a benefit to you, but in actuality it is not. It's not going to be a benefit to you. So we're having a conversation and everyone's talking and they're saying things like, yeah, you know, the foods are bad. It's psychological warfare by what children are seeing, the commercial that they see. They put these things on television to make it seem as if this is what it is. This is psychological warfare, chemical warfare. They're saying all the right things. But little do they know that psychological warfare is much vast and much more robust than they think. Psychological warfare is not just limited to just what you see on television. It's limited to every system that's in this world. It's limited to every construct that's in this world. If something as basic as nutrition is tampered with, meaning something that we as humans use for sustenance, if that is tampered with, and that's faulty and that's false, why would you think something called religion, which is put into the category of spirituality, why would you think that would be beneficial to your spirit, man? That's the point that I was trying to make. Then my coordinator jumps in. He's like, I'm going to go back to nature. He starts to talk about animals, the animal kingdom. He basically starts to compare human beings to animals, saying that if we didn't have the Bible, and this is me paraphrasing, he went longer than this, essentially saying that if we didn't have the Bible, we would operate like animals. Just like he gave the example of lions. He talked about how lions would go to a male lion will go have a bunch of babies from a female lion or several female lions, and then he would claim his territory, and then another lion would try to come and take his pride, and they fight it out, and if that lion beats him, that lion kills all of his kids that the first lion had and takes over. And he starts to go into this whole thing about the lion kingdom, which is great. I mean, what he's saying about lions are true, but we are not lions. We're not animals. You see, we've been bred, we've been taught, we've been indoctrinated that we're born sinners, that we're born wretched. All those are just beliefs. And if you imbibe on those beliefs, if those beliefs are imbued upon your conscience, if that's what you take in, then whatever you believe starts to dictate your actions. And not only does it dictate your actions, it also feeds your thoughts. Your thoughts are being fed. You're eating your beliefs, because your beliefs generate your thoughts. And then out of your thoughts comes your actions. And then when your actions are consistent enough with your beliefs, it then shapes your future. Your destiny is shaped by your thinking process. So when this guy is talking about us and lions, little does he know, lions and humans are totally two different species. We don't think the same. We don't operate the same. But underneath his worldview, because he believes that we need the Bible to be civil, which is not true, because there are many people who don't give a fuck about the Bible. They're very civil. Little does he know that we weren't created by this God of the Bible that you believe in. But I didn't go into all that because that gets too personal. When you start to attack people's gods and their religion, they get very, very defensive, okay? And they take offense to it. They take offense to it. But that's what religion does. Religion is not in a book, and that's what I was trying to explain to them. I'm like, because they were on the subject of women being submissive. And I told them, I said, well, you guys understand that word submissive is coming from a slave theme. The whole book of the Bible is about slavery and oppression. It's about one people dominating another person. That's why it tells you to obey your master, or obey your master as you would obey God. It's a slave book. It's an oppressive book. The God you guys serve, it's an oppressive God. It's not really a God. It's not the creator of the universe. But I didn't say all that because I read the room. Not everyone is ready to hear certain things. They're going to get combative. And I don't operate in arguing. I like for you to shut the fuck up and hear me out first, because if we get into arguing, then I can't really formulate my thoughts. That's why I can sit in my car and talk, because there's no one talking back with me. Because if you're talking back with me, I'm forced to stop talking and actually listen, because I actually listen to people intentionally. I'm not the kind of person that when you're talking, I'm thinking about the next thing to say. I'm trying to absorb everything that you're saying, which is why I'm able to make this video now about the things that my coordinator was talking about yesterday at work, about comparing us to lions. We're two totally different species. But I would argue and say that lions and animals are more holy and spiritual than us. You say, how is that? Well, it's because they're operating in the way that they're supposed to operate. They don't need the Bible. However they were created just to exist. And we as humans were also created just to exist. Our existence is the spiritual system. But my co-worker is underneath the premise. He's underneath the notion. He falls underneath the notion, believing that we as humans are similar to animals, that we're just a little bit higher in terms of our thinking, but we need a book to guide us. I don't need a fucking book to guide me to tell me what's right and wrong. The light element in all of us as humans guides us. As a matter of fact, the moral code is infused in our DNA upon conception. We already have that divine spark. The question is, who imparted that divine spark? Who put that divine spark in us? The extraterrestrial beings that created us did that. The extraterrestrial beings that created us are not from this world. Some people call them fallen angels. Some people call them, they have different names. But the narrative of the Bible, that is this one God that created all of humanity, and this one God wrote a book. Now, he didn't literally write it, but he somehow mesmerized other writers to write his words, and now we're just supposed to follow it blindly, and that's going to help us stay in line. That's the epitome of slavery mindset. When I hear educated black men talk about, I pray every night, and God, I fear God. Why do you need to fear anything? Do you guys understand the low vibrational frequency of fear? How low that is? Do you guys know that fear is a hellish dimension? Do you understand that guilt is also a hellish dimension? If you look at Hawkins' consciousness scale, all the things that Christians and other people in other religions extol and espouse to be under is a hellish concept. Guilt, fear, shame. That's what they tell you to do. They tell you, fear God, fear. I'm not fearing shit, because I am a God in my own element. Those extraterrestrial beings are not gods. They are created beings, but they've made themselves to be gods because, like I said, they're more advanced than we are. So they've created an ecosystem that we're governed under, with the implementation of a worship gene inside of our genetic coding system that makes us more prone to want to worship. So we like, there's a God. There's no God. The creator is not even God. The creator just creates. The creator of the universe is the cause of every created being. Even if a created being creates something else, it's still not the cause of creation, because the fact that we were created by extraterrestrial beings, I'm not going to give homage or praise or worship the thing or the entity that created me. I'm not going to worship anything. I'm just going to exist and operate to my higher self, and operate and endeavor to be the best person that I can be. And I don't need a book for that. I can meditate, I can eat right, I can control the things that I can control. Most people who believe in their little Bible gods are the most unhealthiest people. They're the most sickest people. They're full of gossip. These are churchgoers I'm talking about. These are people who claim to know God. There's nothing different about a person who claims to know God versus a person who doesn't give a fuck about a God. You know why? Because you can't tell the difference. You don't see a halo above the people's heads that say they believe in God. And you don't see devil horns in people who say they don't believe in God. It's not that black and white. We're not that primitive. We're more complex. It's more nuanced than that. It's all about your genetic coding. And the only way to suppress genetics is to alter your belief system. And if I can alter your belief system to make you believe that you're a sinner, that you're a wretch, that you're meant and you're destined for hell, that you need a savior, that you need to pray to something outside of you, I've already put you underneath my spell. Okay? And if you believe in that long enough, that becomes your truth. But I'm here to say that is not true. Is what I'm saying absolute truth? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I can tell you what, if you ranked the narrative of what the Bible is telling you, what I'm telling you, and you actually take your emotions out of it, you will understand that what I'm telling you is true. You cannot compare human beings to animals. Yeah, do we have certain similar traits? Yes, the sustenance, food, in that regard, yes. But we have something that's different, that's put in us. We have a divine spark that's in us because we were created by extraterrestrials who infused some of their genetics inside of us. You don't understand the story of how hominids were already on the planet. Hominids were already on Earth. Before the first Adamu was created, the first man was created, there were already hominids on the planet. So if there were already hominids on the planet, that speaks to somebody or something created those hominids. So did God create the hominids and then he decided to create us? But according to your Bible, the earth was void and Adamu, Adam, and Eve were the first humans. But that's true and not true. They were the first kind of their kind, Homo sapiens sapien. But there were already hominids that were there already. What the extraterrestrials did, they didn't create human beings from scratch. They just took DNA content, they took chromosomes from the hominid, all right, and they infused some of their genetics, some of the Anunnaki's genetics with the hominid's genetics, and it combined the two to create us. So in a sense, my coworker does have a point in the regards that we're similar to animals, in the regard that those hominids had more animalistic traits. All right, hominids short, maybe around 3 to 4 feet. They were like tree people, almost similar to monkeys in a sense. But you take their genetics and you infuse it with the Anunnaki genetics. So now we're taller because the Anunnaki beings were taller beings, 8, 9 feet tall, some even taller, 14 feet. Okay, these were blue, black, purple people. They came in different colors. The Anunnakis weren't a race of beings. They were a race of extraterrestrial beings. However, there were different distinctions and different genetic markers that differentiated each civilization. So just like you have a bunch of people who are on Earth, but on Earth you have different races of people on Earth. The Anunnakis is just a name for extraterrestrials, and extraterrestrials that came from above. Some of these extraterrestrials come from different star systems. And even if they came from the same star systems, you still have a multiracial alien race. Just like you have multiple races on Earth of humans, you have multiple races of extraterrestrial beings. So above, as it is above, so it is below. So there are many things that are happening above that are the same way as they are here on planet Earth. So when you hear in the Bible, it talks about let us make man in our image, it's not one person creating human beings from scratch, taking dirt and making it from dirt. That story is fucking mythical fairy tale bullshit. It's not real. So my coworker is talking about how we need the Bible because without the Bible we would be like animals. It needs to guide us. Maybe it needs to guide you. And that's the lowest form of spirituality that you can get to, where you put yourself on the same level as a fucking animal and you feel like you need a book to guide you on how to live. That's sad. You don't need a book, people. No one did. No one does. Civilization, if that was the case, then the world would be so civilized and the world would be so great. No. We understand that we are governed by the law of duality. I've talked about this before. We have choices to make. That's the difference between us and an animal. Animals operate on instinct. Human beings, we operate off of the base of knowledge and wisdom. And we have the ability to make choices. We don't act instinctually. We can actually mitigate, control our baser urges. What do I mean by baser urges? In other words, yes, we have the capacity to act like animals, but we choose not to be that way because that divine spark pulls that animal instinct back and controls it and puts it in a form where it can be civil. It's not the book or what you're reading that makes you civil. It's not something outside of you that makes you civil. You are already civil. You're born civil. You're born spiritual. You're born already with the capacity as a spiritual being. You are a spiritual being. You going to church and praying to a God or having some connection to a God actually makes you less spiritual than you think you are. Because those beings that created us don't think like us in terms of connecting to a higher power. They don't do that. What they do very cleverly is use the environment. They utilize the cosmos, the stars, the sun, the moon. They utilize all elements to benefit them. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We are put into an environment that has natural resources that we're supposed to be using to accentuate our lifestyles, but we don't do that. We go to ultra-processed foods. We go to ultra-processed spiritual systems, i.e. religion, because it's ultra-processed. It's ultra-processed just like ultra-processed foods. So that's why when we were having this conversation the other day, I didn't understand how they know how everything else is fraudulent and we're being misled and being deceived. But for some reason, when it gets to religion, they can't get over that hurdle. They can't believe that what I'm being told is a lie. Coworker believes that, oh, one man be commitment. He's on this. Maybe he's the animal. He's on this thing about being committed in marriage. But you see how simple-minded we are as human beings because of his current state. Because he talked about how his past marriage didn't work, and when he got more mature and realized what marriage was about, he was committed, follow the Bible, commitment. Well, if you need that to make you commit to your wife, then you are the animal that you're saying. You are the animal that you're speaking of. If you need a book to put you in a state of civility, if a book needs to be part of your life to make you civil, that's sad, my friend. And not only is it sad, you've created some mythical, imaginary God in your head that you feel, which is part of mental illness, if you ask me. You have this sense of a self-centric mindset, as if the universe revolves around you, as if this one God that created the universe is worrying about puny old you on earth and worrying about your commitment to your wife because you have a connection to God. You don't have a connection to shit. The only connection you have is the connection you have to yourself. But unfortunately, the connection you have to yourself is one that puts you in a state of being an animal. So therefore, if you see yourself as an animal, you're going to operate like an animal and think that you need something else to kind of reel you in, to domesticate you like an animal. Which is why many of our black people, they're primed to be slaves. Why? Well, because they've put themselves in a mental disposition of being totally inept, needing an external system or external stimulant to motivate them or to put them in a mindset to be civil. They think they cannot be civil. It's no different than a kid growing up thinking that they're dumb. You are what you think you are. So when I heard that from my coworker, it was very, very sad to hear a grown man who's intelligent speak that way. You guys know that every other construct of this earthly system is false and faulty. And it's to our detriment to actually fall underneath these beliefs. It's to our detriment. It doesn't benefit us. But all of a sudden, when it comes to religion, that benefits us. When we were born into the religions. The religions were already part of the systems. Anyone who's having a newborn baby today, Christianity already exists. These are systems. The food system already exists. The industry is already here. You're born into it. But just because you're born into something doesn't mean that's what you are. You're not a Christian. You're not a Muslim. you already spirituality doesn't have names. Men gave names to not only cause division, but it allows all of us as a human race to be easily dominated, because we are divided, even if we're underneath the classification and underneath that umbrella term of religion, because everybody's religion is supposed to be a religion of peace. Muslims believe that they have a religion of peace. Christianity thinks that their religion is about peace and love. And I'm only naming those two religions. There are many, many more, but every religion, no religion comes out there to say we're out to kill people. No religion does that. No religion actually espouses to be that evil, to have that dark, low vibrational element as its modus of operandi. They don't say that, because if you said that, it'll draw people away. But to draw people in, you have to talk about love. It's this and that. So you have a God in the Old Testament that's just annihilating, killing people, telling people to go inside other people's camps and kill the women, kill the animals, kill this and kill that, and take this and take that. And you don't think that's animalistic, but then all of a sudden you think that we're the animals. I would argue and say that the God that these Christians are serving has more of an animalistic personality than we do, because these are extraterrestrial beings. And the reason why I say that, because past civilizations that existed far before we came on this planet. We're talking about Sumeria. We're talking about Acadia, the Sumerian tablets. They wrote about these extraterrestrial beings. And then what was real funny to me is that one of the female co-workers, she talked about the giants built the pyramids. That the giants must have moved the stones. The giants didn't move the stones. Giants didn't move stones. The pyramids weren't built the way people thought. So I mentioned, I made a suggestion just to invoke some sort of critical thinking. I said, do you think that they had technology? When I asked the question, I know what it is, but I'm trying to see where their heads are at. I asked the question because they were talking about technology and how today we can't build the pyramids like they built back then. And so then one of my coworkers, she was like, well, there were giants. It was the Nephilim. They were carrying the stones. And in my head, I'm like, no, those stones would have to be carried for miles. It would take, no, it's not giants that built the pyramids. It's not giants. So what I said was this. I said, do you guys think that there was some sort of technology? Because they were talking about how they were speaking of the sophistication of the build of the pyramid. They talked about the way the stones are aligned and the way it's aligned to the star systems and the North Star and all stuff that I already know. They were saying all these things. So I said, do you think that they had technology back then that we don't have? And one of my coworkers was like, yeah, they had technology, but not like we have. I said, no, but I mean, what I'm saying is that, do you think that their technology was far more superior than ours, which allows them to do what they did? I said, do you guys know that a part of the Red Sea was just the use of technology that we don't have? But I stopped there. They didn't understand what I was trying to get to. They're thinking that giants, because they're still thinking of this, they're thinking of the creation of man devoid of extraterrestrial influence. But little do they know that the God that they're serving, the God that they actually believe in, is the extraterrestrial, is an extraterrestrial, and comes from an extraterrestrial race, coming from the line called Omicron. Believe it or not, I know there was a variant of COVID called Omicron, but it comes from the Omicron star system. That's where the Anunnaki beings come from. That's the God that they serve. So when I told them, when I said, do you guys think that they use technology? Yeah, but not the kind of technology we have. But she stated it as if the technology we have is more superior than the technology that they had back then. But I would say no. So I injected, I said, no. Do you think that they had more sophisticated technology, more advanced technology than we have? They sort of paused because it was like, because in their heads, in the heads of a lot of simple-minded black people, they believe that we are more advanced than people back then. Yeah, we may be more advanced, but the building of the pyramids weren't built by normal humans like you and I. They weren't built by giants. They were built by extraterrestrial beings who had the sophisticated technology to do the things that we can't do. But people, when you're blinded by your own biases and you're blinded by emotion because you have this strong affinity to this Jesus Christ God that you have, your mind blocks you from actually receiving truth. What I was doing, I was trying to lay a track down that would guide them to critical thinking, that would help them find out their own truth. I didn't want to tell it to them, because if I say that, like I said, you attack anybody's religion, or they perceive it as being an attack on their religion, they get really defensive, they get really offended by that. It's like, hell no. So what I did, I said, okay, number one, do you think they had technology back then? Well, maybe they did, but not like ours, as if ours is more superior. So I said, okay, do you think that theirs were more superior? But it stopped, because in their head they can't fathom how people in the past would have more sophisticated technology than we do, because they still feel like the existence of this third dimensional realm is linear, as if time exists. Extraterrestrials, time doesn't exist in that sense. They come from a different star system. Their technology is far more superior than ours. Go back 500,000 years ago, 600,000 years ago, 800,000 years ago. They had technology that we can't even think of. When I say they, I'm talking about extraterrestrials that come from another star system. Their origin is not of this third dimensional realm. They're not from Tiamat. They're not from Earth. They're not from this Earth called Tiamat. They're not from here. So if they're not from here, that means that they have things that we don't have. Okay? So they couldn't even pass, she couldn't even pass that hurdle. She was just stuck. Like, huh? Yeah. The pyramids weren't built by man. There were extraterrestrials involved in building that stuff. Man couldn't come up with those calculations and systems. How can we're Earth-based. How can we know about this? We don't come from there. We're Earth, we come from here. But we do have that divine spark of those who came from there in us, so we can have the ability to learn about the star systems and use those systems and use those sort of truths and knowledge and the wisdom of those things to benefit our lives here on Earth. But when you start thinking of, when you get simple-minded to the point where it's all about just God and connection with God and pray to control me because I don't want to be an animal, then you've totally lost your sense of spirituality. You're not actually spiritual. You're actually an oppressed spiritual slave to the Anunnaki gods that created us to be that way. But we were built to be much more. All right, peace, guys. Remember, your health is your wealth.